Welcome to Laurel Smith for Chicago, Illinois, home video and artworks creations. As we look at my latest archaeological and theological based discoveries concerning the stone Ethiopian cross-shaped building structure in Lalibela. As we look at this African continent civilizations of Ham being referred to in the book of Genesis as the Hamites or Ham, whose ancient kingdoms was Egypt, Mizraim, Ethiopia, and the entire African continent. But Afro-Americans reading the 400-year-old mistranslated English King James Bible get lost in the word terminology. Since we're talking about Africa and the African kings being attributed to the construction of the octagonal building structure in Jerusalem called the Dome of the Rock, where we must first go back to the first temple of King Solomon, an Ethiopian king. If you look straight forward at it, you see a vertical section of stone and then a horizontal section. Now, surrounding the base, it's like a square section going around. But now it's the same architectural blueprint of the frontal view of the stone Ethiopian cross-shaped building structure we see in modern Lalibela. So, as we get closer to the octagonal building structure in Jerusalem, lower octagonal outer wall area, this is the entrance door next that has a canopy over it. So, next to that entrance door, you see a stone rectangular window frame on the lower octagonal outer wall. Now, this stone rectangular window frame has dual stone X's, like one below the other. Now, this is the architectural blueprint of the stone Ethiopian cross-shaped building structure in Lalibela. This 100% solved the archaeological based question: did African continent kings construct the octagonal building structure called the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem? Well, as we draw the stone white X's in the lower octagonal outer wall area of the Dome of the Rock building structure on the blank sheet of paper, the X's must be drawn in the thickness of your little finger. So, once we completed drawing one X above the other, now all we have to do is draw a straight line from the corners of the upper X so it intersects with the corners of the lower X. Once we've done this on the left and right side, the resulting image generated is a stone Ethiopian cross-shaped building structure 11, in which we currently see in modern Lalibela. This 100% proves that the African continent kings are responsible for the construction of the first holy temples in Jerusalem. But now, since the book of Genesis referred to the African continent civilizations as Ham, and it goes on to speak of the ancient kingdoms of Ham, which is Egypt, Babylon, Ethiopia. So therefore, as we connect the black man face on the lion's body, as couched out in front of the Northeast African continent, Isaiah 19:19 Giza pyramid, to Ethiopia. Now we have the book of Genesis 49 chapter and 8 verse, couching Ethiopia lion sphinx of the tribe of Judah. Now we connect King Solomon, the son of King David, another African king, to the construction of the first temple. So as we look at this Ethiopian 6-point star within the upper interior ceiling of the stone cross-shaped building structure in Lalibela, building 11, we have uncovered the African continent origin of Judaism, along with the 6-point star and the dual white stone X's that appear one above the below the other. And this is next to the entrance door that has a canopy over it to the octagonal building structure out of the lower wall area. So as we get closer to the Dome of the Rock building structure roof, octagonal roof, there's a wall supporting the golden dome. Now we walk around that wall, we're going to notice stone rectangular window frames, and in each stone rectangular window frame we see the same step pyramid E architecture. Now this is stacking 5 blocks on top of one another on the left and right side that they form a step that you walk upon. Now at the bottom of the step pyramid E, we have 5 blocks So now we connect two step pyramids at their bases. We have the step pyramid E. Now this is the final calling card, which 100% proves archaeologically that the African continent stone cross-shaped building structure in Ethiopia has the same step pyramid E base that we see in the Dome of the Rock outer wall area in which supports the Golden Dome. So this 100% proves that there's an African continent king origin of the architectural building structure called the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem to its construction. But now, we have missed the ball if we do not associate the book of Psalms 105:23, which where the 400-year-old mistranslated European King James Bible line tried to place someone else from Europe or from the European Gentile nation entering in to the Judean desert and the land of Canaan. However, to solve this, we must look at the before the flood of Noah, before the land surface changed. So now we have this huge African continent, a thin strip of water, and this V-shaped piece of land. All right. Now at the bottom of the V-shaped piece of land is Arabia. Now in the middle is Iraq and Babylon and Canaan, and at the top is Jerusalem and then Judea. Now this is very important that we remember the word Judea, because the book of Genesis speaks of the ancient African continent civilizations as Ham, and that the ancient kingdoms of Ham is Ethiopia, Babylon, Egypt. Now, if we look at this and go back in time before the flood of Noah and squeeze the V-shaped piece of land that has Arabia at the bottom, Babylon and Canaan and Iraq in the middle, and at the top it has the Judean desert and Jerusalem. So if we go back in time and squeeze the V-shaped piece of land back to the Northeast African continent coastline, we have one huge African continent, which solves Psalms 105:23, European King James Bible line. Why now, if we draw a line from the black man's face on the lion's body in front of the Northeast African continent Giza Pyramid going east across the Euphrates River, we intersect the V-shaped piece of land. Now, that V-shaped piece of land intersected by the line going from the Giza Pyramid across the Euphrates River is called the so-called biblical caves of Jethro in Midian Arabia. Now, on the outer wall of this huge mountain of so-called biblical caves of Jethro, we see a stone Giza Sphinx face carved in stone. Then above it, up on the upper mountain wall area, we see stone step pyramid upside down. And these are the same 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks stacked on top of one another that they form a step that you walk upon. So here's the calling card that proves that the African continent civilizations are the origin of Judaism. Not only do we have a black man face on the lion's body being denied in theological racism within the 400-year-old mistranslated English King James Bible, but now we see that the so-called V-shaped piece of land that during the flood of Noah separated from the Northeast African continent into what we call the Arabian land surface, or the V-shaped piece of land where Arabia is at the middle, Babylon and Iraq is in the middle, Arabia is at the bottom of the V-shaped piece of land, Iraq and Babylon is in the middle, and Judea and Jerusalem is at the top of the V-shaped piece of land. Now, this is where we expose Psalms 105:23. Well, the white men of the European Gentile nations, through the 16th century King James of England, appointed 72 Greek and Hebrew scholars to travel to the Judea and Jerusalem land surface to study Islamic Aramaic Dead Sea Scrolls. However, remember the 12 African continent tribes that the black man faced on the lion's body ruled over, called the Giza Sphinx lion of the tribe of Judah. Okay, he was denied in theological-based racism in the 16th century by the 72 Greek and Hebrew scholars appointed by King James to write the story of the African continent step pyramid East civilization of Ham. Notice I said African continent step pyramid, stone step pyramid temple ruins of Ham. Now this is very important because when the Bible speaks of the ancient kingdoms of Ham as Egypt, where we see stone step pyramid of Saqqara, step pyramid of Doja, Then it goes on to say Babylon, where we see more additional stone step pyramid structures. Then it goes on to say Ethiopia and all of the rest of the African continent, ancient cities.
The Rosemills for Chicago, Illinois, finally connects the Isaiah 1919 Giza pyramid, lying sphinx of the tribe of Judah, in front of the pyramid, to Mars. The Dome of the Rock seems to point to Mars with its dual stone axis upon the entrance of the octagonal building structure, whereas the wall that supports the Golden Dome has ancient Babylonian stele pyramid E design. And the only people, according to the King James Bible, that started the city of Babylon was the African continent civilization of Ham, where we see the oldest stone 6-point star that has a central sun. If we go back to the Temple Mount, African Adam creation, we will follow the globe Earth stele pyramid E Mercator projections back to the fourth planet, because that seems to be the Sidonian land surface images, in which mirrors the Dome of the Rock structures. In fact, if you get in orbit around Mars, way before you land on Mars, you in orbit looking down, you see Ethiopian stone cross-shaped building structure with an octagonal building structure at its roof, with a dome. So this dual stone axis is the Ethiopian cross-shaped building structure shape. And so when we go to the Dome of the Rock entrance, in fact, you have to walk up a group of steps. At the top of the steps is 4 U-shaped stone gates. So as you look through the U-shaped stone gates at the Dome of the Rock outer wall, you will see dual stone white X's. And these dual stone white X's is a calling card to ancient Ethiopia. Like we talked about the stone cross-shaped building structure in Lalibela appearing on Mars that's seen from orbit, where we also see the Giza Sphinx line of ancient Judea and Jerusalem on Mars, his face image, next to the Ethiopian cross-shaped building structure. Also, we see a land surface 6-point star image, huge. So when we talk about the origin of ancient Judaism, we go back to Mars and the Dome of the Rock in ancient Egypt. As we look at the word Cairo in the dictionary, it means city of Mars. So what part of African Adam being created on Mars does the Dome of the Rock portray? Well, for that, we have to go back to the 1976 Viking train 35A72 of Mars Sidonian land surface. Now, Mars Sidonian land surface, when you view it, the whole entire land surface, from above, you'll see a stele pyramid E Mercator projection grid surrounding the 5 Sidonian pyramids and pentagon. Within this stele pyramid E Mercator projected land surface grid, we see a huge Giza Sphinx face 12, and then we see a 2011 Dome of the Rock land surface image. So the land surface stele pyramid E image of Sidonia not only has the 5 pyramids within the globe Earth stele pyramid E Mercator projection, in which we now see up on the Dome of the Rock outer wall, which supports the Golden Dome back here on Earth. So as we rediscovered that Mars, or African Adam, is represented by the stone face on Mars. However, in the 10-degree sunrise, we see an EA shadow African face. And so when we come back to the Dome of the Rock, we also see that the Mars face is portrayed upon the Middle East land surface grid. If we squeeze African continent A back to B, B is to the east area of Africa coastline, where Jerusalem, Judea, Palestine, Babylon exists. So when we squeeze A and B back together, we go back to a time 50 million years in time before Noah's flood, which separated East Africa coastline from the B area or the Middle East area. So when we reconnect the Giza Sphinx of ancient Judea and Jerusalem, stone 6-point star, and ancient Babylon, we see that the stone 6-point star of the Giza Sphinx as the Giza Sphinx face. So this stone 6-point star is crucial to understanding the solar theology of ancient Judaism, because there's a central sun within the 6-point star surrounded by 12 planets. Well, today's modern European state of Israel, 6-point star has no sun. And so when we go back to rediscover that the Temple Mount, like UFO aliens, created the normal shaped humans on Mars, or this would be the EA shadow African face of Sidonia. Now, the Ethiopian stone cross-shaped building structure in Lalibela also had ceiling UFO images and the stone 6-point star. So thank you for viewing these great archaeological, geological, astronomical discoveries of the wells of Chicago, Illinois.